Welcome, Reanimated fans, to this week's episode. I am H.A. Conrad, here as always with my intrepid, yet today, croaky co-host, Stuart Tiffin. How are you, Stuart?
Ribbit, H.A. Conrad. How are you?
You're good. I don't know that the croaky's a bad thing. I think you sound pretty good.
I sound like death warmed up, but yes, thank you.
Well, that's kind of fitting considering our subject matter. But
Totally, yeah. Every time that I get closer to death, you applaud. I like that.
Have to be consistent. But today we are talking about Dead Set episodes 2 through 5, and also have not too much in the way of zombie news, just like one sort of upcoming tidbit, which we had talked about before. The full trailer of Santa Clarita Diet came out, and I am excited to watch that, though I still feel like it's a little bit close to the iZombie premise. Not sure what your thoughts are, Stuart, but it does look funny. It looks like it's got some good writing, and I'm reserved, but I think it'll be fun in any case.
This is definitely not the Timothy Olyphant of Deadwood.
No.
With the steely gaze, the sheriff, and the fast draw. This is sweater vest tied around his neck, Timothy Olyphant, who's also just as much fun to watch. So yeah, I'm excited for this. And of course, what's her name?
Drew Barrymore.
Thank you. Drew Barrymore is also good in that kind of bubbly comedy way. So I think that this has a lot of potential.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to check that out. It airs February 3rd. And are they doing, that's on Netflix, correct?
Mm-hmm.
No? And are they doing the full season? I think they are. They're just releasing everything at once, I suspect.
Well, considering Netflix has been throwing shade recently at HBO because their stuff isn't bingeable, I think they're going to stick to their binge guns now and let you binge.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the binging. I enjoyed Travelers, which if you haven't checked that out, that had some good pieces to it.
I just finished that first season. That was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they renewed it. I don't know that I saw that they had, but I hope.
And I've moved on to Crazy Head based on your recommendation. And yeah, I'm like, there is a straight up zombie character that's lasted several episodes.
Although they do, I realized after, because I hadn't watched enough of it at that point, but I realized after that they are very specifically not calling it a zombie character. They're calling it a revenant, which, come on, guys. But anyway. I haven't finished that out, but I'm almost finished with that. So maybe we can talk about that at some point. But without further ado, are you ready to dive into Dead Set?
Dead Set, man. I sure as hell needed a sorbet of some kind of other entertainment by the time I got to the end of this show.
Yeah, this is a little rough. It had a lot of good moments, and I do stand by the original, my original thoughts on this, which is that, whoever did this had I think it was a good idea. I think that they kept it very contained. And then my question about why there wasn't a sequel was answered pretty clearly at the end of this.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I felt like it was very consistent throughout the whole series, and I think one of the things that made it successful is they kept it very manageable, and most of the episodes after the first one were in 20 to 25 minute segments.
Yep.
So pretty easy to watch this very quickly, but I think my feeling was that they packed a lot into that small amount of time.
Oh god, yeah.
So and I do think in terms of the acting and the character development, considering how short some of these episodes were, you got a real sense of these characters. You kind of knew what they were going to do. I don't know that there were any huge surprises, but I thought it was very clever in the way that certain characters played off of each other and manipulated each other. The same way, and I mean, the premise of it being on the set of a reality TV show, they never really strayed from that. It was really just so meta, and just hats off to the creators of the show.
Yeah, certainly by episodes 4 and 5, they really embrace that meta reality TV kind of motif even more. In episodes 2 and 3, they kind of branch out a little more and get just so that they can work on Rick's storyline, which is nice, and to get our heroes out to the supermarket. But once they're stuck back in the house again, they definitely go back to that, but not like in a tired way, but just in a way that is part of their ongoing critique about society.
Right.
But and this is basically 2 hours of TV, so it's kind of like a little more than 2 hours. It's essentially they had a zombie movie idea and they just made it for TV,
Hmm.
but it really works.
It does
So
really work. It's to me, it's one of the more successful series, just in how they went about it, and the filming of it. I thought, and the editing was really just very well done, very tight. They don't really, and it's also in the tradition of your usual zombie film too. So I really thought that that was just fantastic. So let's. Do you want to start out talking about Rick's storyline?
let's just go through it
Sure.
as chronologically as we can, I guess, because episode 2 picks right up where the first episode ended, with inside the Big Brother house, and
Mm-hmm.
Joplin's freaking out about the fact that Kelly just squished a guy's face
Mm-hmm.
with a fire extinguisher,
Yep.
and they're all in denial, mostly. Certainly Joplin the most, until she takes them up on the roof of the Big Brother house and shows them the lot of the studio, which is just overrun, and there's fire and there's dead people and
Right.
people eating people.
Well, and
And
also Angel got bitten during this
yeah,
confrontation, and they have to deal with the whole idea that one of their people has been infected very early on, and what to do with her.
but of course they
And
don't deal with that at all, do they?
nope, nope. And Grayson, who is, I do like the idea that he is, he's a nurse and is basically saying that he needs medical supplies and things like that. And Kelly's kind of like, yeah, you can do that, but I don't think that that's gonna help what's happening.
I don't know that she understands that yet, though.
She
I
doesn't, but
yeah.
she does understand that if Angel is to die, she becomes dangerous. So that
Eventually,
piece
she
she
certainly
does.
seems to. I don't think they actually know that until they've had their run-in with the cops
Hmm.
at the supermarket, and but by the time
Yeah,
they get back,
but before she leaves, she tells Grayson that if
oh, you
Angel
got to
dies,
tie him up and stuff.
to
Yeah,
stab her in the head. So
true,
there
true.
that's pretty much how she leaves him taking care of his friend, and he's like, yeah, okay, crazy lady. Um, but yeah, I like this whole interaction though, because this is the first. Kelly's a staff member. She's an outsider with this group because they're all the Big Brother inmates, so to speak. So it's the first time that she's going to have to work with them cooperatively to do something as a team. And so I liked that they did this because it just shows that relationship building.
Hmm.
And she takes a leadership role pretty quickly, as she has pretty much from the moment she steps into that room, because she has more knowledge than they do.
Right.
As she would already as like an outsider in the show. She has more knowledge of what's going on in the outside world. So in some ways, she has to be that leader anyway. So that's kind of interesting,
She even has a line like, "I wish I didn't know that about the supermarket. Like,
right?
I wish I could plead ignorance and say I don't know what we should do next." Um, Grayson's nursing, I'm going to put that in quotes, is pretty bad because he never actually puts pressure on the wound. We always have these shots of the wound like bleeding, and
Mm-hmm.
him kind of fussing and clucking over Angel, but he never is actually doing anything that I would consider first aid.
Yeah, that is a little bit of an oversight, but hey, there we go.
Yeah, that's a nitpick, but still, I'm like, come on. I know you've got a nurse on set when you're making this show who's going to be like, yeah, guys, you really should just put pressure on the wound and try and stop the bleeding.
Right. And then we've also got Patrick and Pippa. They kind of cut between scenes between the Big Brother cast and Patrick and Pippa, and I have to say that their segments are some of the most disgusting and also funny,
Yeah,
but super disgusting interactions. Patrick does nothing to redeem himself. He just keeps getting worse as this series goes on, but he's
yeah,
just disgusting.
he's terrible. Um, Pippa's funny, says really dumb stuff, but that yeah, they're like a light kind of interlude for all the other drama that's going on. Because also we've got Rick has woken up at the train station where he just
Hmm.
slept overnight and decides to walk somewhere because the trains obviously aren't running.
Right, and he
Um,
still hasn't had the interaction with the zombies that, or the infected that other people have, so he's still in the dark. He
yeah,
just has this weird thing that, like, the trains aren't running, and he has no idea why. But he really, you know, he runs into another survivor who tries to bring him up to speed, but it's not clear that he fully believes her immediately.
he gets in a bit of a pickle before he runs into her,
Yeah,
and they have a very interesting relationship that also evolves over the course of the show. But it's Alex is really like the meanest person ever.
she's kind of mean.
She's not a nice lady. But she saves his butt. Like he gets cornered in a convenience store. Um,
Well, look, she's not a nice lady, but she has grasped more what is going on more quickly, or maybe because she's had to deal with it more immediately than he has. So he gets trapped in the store with the crazy zombies. So that's like he's still in that shock mode, and she is very much in the getting things done and surviving mode.
yeah, still she could communicate better. The only way she communicates is by insulting him and
Well,
telling him to do things and be faster at them.
I
So
read
it's
that more as her trying not to get too close because clearly she's already. You can tell that she probably has suffered some losses.
well, she talks about it
And
later
she
on that she's had
talks.
to murder her best friend, etc. But it's yeah, there that's also kind of funny. Like just that Rick has this like patience of a saint that he's obviously been caught on his back foot, doesn't really know how to react, but he's running with Alex, who has sort of a plan, get to the coast in her stolen car,
Hmm.
and that seems to work until their car breaks down,
Yeah.
and then they spend an inadvisable amount of time trying to fix the car because it goes from daylight to nighttime.
Right. And also, who really know? I mean, I wouldn't know how to fix a car. Why do you assume that Rick knows how to fix it? Like he's kind of like, okay, I'll try, but I don't know that his expertise includes that. So I did think it was pretty harsh of her to be pissed at him for not being able to fix the car in the dark.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of a tough undertaking. Their run though to the gated house is pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Um, so that's kind of nice. Very much a little, like a lot of tension there, and they make it, so that's kind of cool. But I do feel like the house that they end up in is one of those things. There's always like an interlude of some kind of like a respite from the world, and that's what this place seems like. So you really have to ask, why would you ever leave it? So of course they have a mechanism by which they want Rick to leave it, but which is that the only thing on television is the Big Brother house still, which is somewhat ridiculous, but okay. Like
Yeah.
I guess we have to give it to them, but I don't know. If I were them, I would never leave that house until forced to, because it's got a fence around it. It's got food, it's got water, it's got an escape, which is the river. So I don't know. That seemed just really crazy to me that they would even consider relinquishing that haven.
Oh, but come on. Once Rick, I mean, he doesn't see her this episode, so I don't want to get ahead. But yeah,
No.
it does seem like a pretty ideal place to stay. The one downside is in this universe, zombies are kind of like are drawn to people who are alive. So they have at least five or six at the gate who never
True.
leave, even if Alex and Rick have stayed inside, the zombies never just wander away.
That's true.
And
That's
and the
true.
same is happening later on after this episode. The same happens at the Big Brother house, where it's kind of like Dawn of the Dead 2004 when all the zombies in Milwaukee or wherever they are just keep coming
Come to the mall. Yeah.
at the mall. So with this episode, which is like 22 minutes, wraps up when Kelly has her plan to get the medical stuff, and they use pots and pans to distract the zombies that are in the courtyard to come over to the Big Brother house, while Marky, Kelly, and Space run for the van. And it's a pretty smooth little bait and switch. Only exception is that Marky cuts himself getting in the van, and then they speed off. It's like, oh wow, that was easy. Episode three.
Yep.
Episode three starts with the our gang of three running or arriving at the store in their van.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly and Marky go inside, leaving space to honk the horn if he sees zombies, which
I
I didn't
know,
think
like that's their plan.
that's not a good plan.
No, none at all.
Um, Kelly rolls a can down the aisle to do the old Walking Dead bang on the window, draw out the zombies trick, and I was like, that's
Hmm.
smart. Nothing happens, and
Right.
then this becomes sort of an issue for me later because
Then suddenly they appear, right?
nothing happens. Yeah, and then suddenly there's at least three in there because two come later, and then a third comes out after the shootout.
Hmm. Well, maybe the can sound wasn't enough to bring them out.
Because zombies might knock stuff over. I was thinking that too,
Yeah.
but eventually it's Marky dropping a crowbar that kind of like sends everybody over the edge.
Yep. Um, and so they're basically. I mean, it starts out they have the supplies and that's successful. But then because of the sudden surprise appearance of these zombies, they have to run out of the store and run into these cops that are very like, as you would imagine, on edge, and they're they're pretty. There's like definitely a concern because they have guns. And the question that I had, because I didn't think cops in the UK were allowed to carry guns, but maybe I'm wrong. I didn't think that they were,
I
but
think they can in special circumstances, but I
mm,
don't know 100% the rules on that because certainly they have them. Anybody British listening is gonna think I'm a complete idiot, but they definitely have guns at Buckingham Palace, and those are cops.
well,
So
right. But I feel like that's a different. But maybe you're right.
you
But
know,
in any case, so they're out there. They think that that bite on Marky's arm, or they think the wound on Marky's arm is a bite, and it's not, and they have to basically talk them down. Um, and then they're all attacked. They're distracted for a minute because some zombies attack them, and one of the cops gets bitten, and the other cop just shoots him.
yeah.
And says, "Look, I had to kill somebody else because they turned." So there's confirmation of that, and they are pretty stressed out. So
Well, also before Kelly and Marky have run outside with the zombies behind them, they found their stuff, right? And then
mhm.
they find the Heat magazine where Marky's on the cover,
Oh
and
yeah, that's actually
and
pretty funny.
he sees some stuff about himself, like how he's apparently bad in bed, a couple of other some other negative stuff that I guess Veronica, the blonde girl, has been saying in the diary room, which
Yeah,
is why which is what I assume. So, but the fact that he's like kind of he's in a zombie apocalypse now. And first
right.
of all, he's like, "Hey, look, I was on the cover of this magazine."
Who
And then he's like,
cares?
"This magazine's full of bullshit because, of course, I'm great in bed. What are they talking about? What do they know? And don't tell anybody back at the house about this." You're
Hmm.
like, "Oh dear, this is not a good sign." The fact that he's still
No.
concerned with his stuff, obviously in the apocalypse.
Well, in his defense, this is also pretty new to them. They're having to take in a lot of stuff. So to me, this is sort of a like an indication that he hasn't fully shifted over to the new world order. And I mean, I think part of it's like you'd like to believe that this stuff still matters, and it doesn't. But I think that that's just part of the ridiculousness of this. So we'll
It's
see.
pretty ridiculous.
Yep.
And I like the fact that the cops initially, when they roll up on Space because he's outside by himself, they're like, get on your knees. Um, and then they don't shoot him, or they kind of relax because they find out that he's they recognize him from the show,
Hmm.
or at least one of them does, the younger one. But yeah, but something's definitely off with these two, right? They're talking about how somebody asks who's in charge, and they don't really have an answer to that because they respond by saying you're supposed to stay inside. Why aren't you just like doing what you're told and staying inside? They don't actually have any answers about authority, and you have to think based on how bad it is everywhere else in this show that this show decides to like reveal to us these might be the last two cops in England.
Could be. Could be. So yeah, so that's kind of a big dose of reality to them, I think. Um,
Yeah, but this little scene plays itself out in a good way because well, Kelly continues to evolve
yes.
from the Shrieker to now shooting cops in the leg, but still, she pulls a Shane and Otis, and then grabs a couple of guns, a pistol and a little submachine gun, and they get back in the van and run off with all their supplies. It's kind of like the perfect supply run in a way.
Mm-hmm.
They
And they
left
have
with
a
a lot
gun.
more than they were hoping for.
Right. And meanwhile, back at the ranch, things are not going so well with Angel, as you would imagine. She's going downhill pretty quickly, and Grayson, showing how bad he is at his job, just kind of sits there for the most part. He's I don't want to say he whines a lot. He does a lot of oh my god type of things, and is like,
Hmm.
oh, keep breathing, which none of which would help her. And we don't actually see the moment where she dies or where she reanimates, but we hear it because he screams pretty loudly, and Veronica and is it Joplin? Yes.
Yeah,
They hear the scream from the greenhouse and sort of see Angel in quick pursuit of Grayson. Um, their planning about this is kind of interesting, because it's like Veronica actually jumps into the fray a little bit more
yeah,
quickly.
she's got some balls.
Yep, and she just like pushes reanimated Angel into the pool where it's
Honestly, that wasn't her. That was Grayson.
oh,
Like
was it
Joplin,
Grayson?
Joplin is
Oh,
shitting
okay.
himself and closing the doors, and Grayson, whose throat has been torn out, is helping Veronica more than
Right.
like
Like
he's. It's a
he's
real
hanging
shame that
on.
yeah, like you could tell that Grayson had a good head on his shoulders. So it's a
Yeah.
real shame that his character is going out this early, especially with the way that the things just progress as the show goes on. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's actually Grayson who
Oh.
pulls Angel off of Veronica and throws her in the pool, and then he like falls over and dies.
Yeah, I admit I was kind of sad that they killed him off this quickly, because I liked his character, and at least I'd like to see the different, like, his reasoning in the house, and his off-air persona was much more down to earth than the kind of ridiculousness he put forth during the out whatever party it was that all this started at.
Hmm.
But he was much more effective than Joplin, and unfortunately, he makes a quick exit and reanimation. So Veronica and Joplin are left to figure it out. Although Joplin is really no use whatsoever, not very helpful.
Yeah, and we've also already had a scene with Joplin
Oh,
skeezing out on Veronica in the shower, and this is another scene that kind of surprises you with Veronica, that she knows that he's watching her through the two-way mirror, or
mm-hmm.
one way, or whatever it is, one-way glass, and basically tells him how sad it is that he's there, and that she would have, I don't know, flashed him if she felt sorry for him if he just asked.
Right,
And
and he's
it's
and he's just kind of creepy and skitters off in a creepy way. Like
yeah,
it all is just, he's really, again, him and Patrick, they just don't make them very likable, though he's a little less despicable, because he's just kind of, you know a pariah in the house.
hmm,
But he, and he's a coward and whatnot. But yeah, that was a really creepy scene to me, actually. So I I liked Veronica more in that, but she is a little bit kind of full of herself and whatever. But at least she's more effective in terms of getting rid of the zombies. So so they come up with a plan to get rid of Zombie Grayson, which involves, and she kind of forces Joplin to go along with her on this one. So she's just like, okay, we have to trap him, and we're going to put a sheet over his head, and then we're just going to bash him till he dies, which is what they do, which is a little difficult because you can't exactly tell where his head is, but they somehow manage it.
yeah, they actually pull that off. I was like, nice job, guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then
Meanwhile,
that,
Patrick is taking a shit in the
ugh,
garbage can that he
he's
had pissed
so
in before,
gross. He's so
because
disgusting.
he stayed up all night drinking champagne and eating old hors d'oeuvres.
Ugh. And
Uh,
Pippa's reactions are pretty amazing.
yeah.
And he is just so horrible. And all the while, Davina's out in the hall kind of going crazy. And, she really went into that role with a lot of gusto. Like, she really plays it
Hmm.
to the hilt. So, hats off to Davina on this one. And the rest of the group comes back just as Grayson is killed. And they see Angel in the pool. And this is the whole big scene where Kelly is just basically like, why is she just sitting in the pool? And is like, well, you know what? We can still win the day because all these zombies are just, they have no intelligence whatsoever. So,
Yeah.
um,
So this is something that I think the showrunners want us to take away as like a okay, our heroes just went and had like a real good banner run at the
mm-hmm,
supermarket. They got guns, they got supplies, and they've come to this conclusion that zombies are dumber than they are. And so how can they lose is kind of
yeah,
Kelly's manifesto. And so I think we have to keep that in mind as we watch the rest of the show
mm-hmm,
because intelligence is really not something that the Big Brother house has in
that is
much.
true. That is true. But in this case, Kelly really shows how badass she has become by just shooting Angel in the head with the gun that she had grabbed.
I would call that a
Um,
waste of ammunition since zombie wasn't going anywhere, but okay.
Agreed. But I think that they're just showing that she's
Yeah.
like taking, you know.
She's already shot a person. She's not going to have a problem shooting a zombie at this point. Also, at the end of this episode, episode 3, Rick finally sees them on the live feed.
Right.
And because they've killed Angel and they're walking back inside the house. And he sees Kelly and he freaks out. He's like, oh, that's her. That's her. And Alex looks less than enthused.
Well, right, because now he has more motivation to leave the house, and he already was kind of not so psyched about staying there in the first place. But the other thing is that I think that if there's the person that you care about, and keep in mind Rick and Kelly were estranged, they were having their own problems before all of this, zombie apocalypse stuff came to pass. But I can imagine that if you don't know what's happened to your loved one and you get to see them on the television, that has got to feel like so amazing to know that she was one of the few survivors.
Hmm.
So they do play that pretty well. Just his reaction and his immediate need to get out of there and to go in and reunite with Kelly. But I also think I didn't actually expect Alex to go with him in this case. But I guess being with somebody seems like it would be more secure than being alone.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. If you were in a farmhouse estate, as nice as it is with zombies all around the
Right.
perimeter,
Right.
you might just go completely batshit if you're by yourself for long.
Right. And I think she knows that, and even though she's not psyched about it, as reluctant as she seems, the idea of just being totally alone, even though she's pretty mean to Rick in general and not necessarily warm and fuzzy, I think she fully understands I think she understands what the ramifications of what this world has become means more so than anybody else. I think Rick still somehow thinks that this is a temporary state of affairs, and I don't think that she does. So realistically, she has a more realistic view, and I don't think that she thinks they're actually going to survive this adventure. but
Yeah.
but yeah, it goes anyway.
She paints this picture for Rick of that's almost like, hey, you and me were the last two people on Earth. Let's
Mm-hmm.
let's make society, like let's rebuild. Because she talks about like, we can fish, we can grow vegetables, just we can live here long term.
Right.
So it's kind of like, that's her marriage proposal for Rick in a way.
It is, and he's having none of it. So
Well, he's not even thinking that way, right?
nope.
Like you said, he's just like, look, I can see my girlfriend on television. I know it's just 36 miles away. So let's figure it out. And yeah, and I feel for both of them because she obviously kind of does have the bigger picture in mind, but at the same time, I think that his argument is very sympathetic. So, and I guess that's kind of how she caves in the end. Um, Patrick and Pippa have some fun stuff getting out of the toilet
Mm-hmm.
lounge.
Yeah. Yeah. So they have to get rid of Davina, and Patrick pretty much threatens and coaches Pippa into part of his plan. And it's a similar team plan, not similar, but the same idea. It's similar dynamic between the two of them as it was between Veronica and Joplin. So they have a plan that they're gonna sort of keep her a little bit at bay while Patrick dispatches her, and eventually they do succeed, but not without Pippa saying a lot of weird and Pippa-like things.
Like, that's a light machine?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they wrote her just a little bit too stupid, but
I think they did, but I mean, I think that's part of the comic relief that they're trying to throw in here. And I mean, they're playing the reality television angle to the hilt, and this is one of the more annoying pieces of it. So, but they end up in the control room, and now because they can communicate with the housemates, it has this like super weird dynamic because you know, they don't really know, Patrick and Pippa don't really know what's been going on outside. And basically the people in the house are like, oh no, like, we're not going to risk ourselves for you guys to end up here. And Patrick deploys some of the Big Brother torture tactics, I guess, that they use on the show, just like loud noises and all sorts of stupid stuff, to force them into getting them to the studio or to the Big Brother house.
It's real cheap lowball tactics, but they eventually say, okay, fine, we'll come, and it's just Kelly and Space who go. So Space continues just to be this like total reliable dude for Kelly, but there's nothing, they're not shipping them at all. It's like just
Nope.
Space is this good guy, and so it's an interesting thing that they're doing. They're just like, this is the one guy who is reasonable, rational, intelligent, and
no real drama.
No drama
there with him.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
That's kind of cool.
They have a funny moment. It would be funnier if I knew who this Brian guy is, but they walk into a cardboard cutout of this dude. And they're like, oh, it's just Brian, and then the zombie version of him runs through it and attacks them, and they shoot him. Yeah. And they're like, oh, it really was Brian.
And he just like leaps out at them too, which is kind of funny.
I think that was the same guy that we saw eating someone when Patrick and Pippa were moving to the control room. But yeah, it was just, I think, I thought, I didn't realize that they had brought back these reunion people, like former housemates, as much as they did. But when I looked at the cast per episode, there's a few episodes where there aren't any other than Davina, like members of the former cast. But then as you get into the later episodes, like 4 and 5, there's a few. Like this guy and there's a woman whose name starts with A that I can't pronounce.
Yeah, no, I saw that there was like a ton of cameos here.
Yeah.
Which I think would appeal to those fans of Big Brother. So since you and I haven't actually followed the Big Brother houses, it's a little lost on us.
And it's like, pop culture knowledge from 8 years ago, which is very ephemeral.
Yeah, that's true. So the interesting thing I think, though, about the Patrick and Pippa entrance into the Big Brother house is that, Patrick's goal is he wants to take charge immediately, and also feels like he has more control than he actually has, and he has to be convinced of all the stuff that everybody else already knows is the case. So they have to show him that everything outside is overrun, yet he still doesn't fully believe it somehow, or he doesn't believe that they are trapped. So basically they are making the people that are in the Big Brother house, mainly Kelly, and I would say Space to some extent, are making the argument that, look, we have everything we need here. We need to just shelter in place. And it's a similar argument to what Alex has made to Rick. But in Patrick's case, he's like a total dick, and doesn't really believe, he thinks they're all idiots, that he's the only one, and he's used to pulling the puppet strings. So he, I think in this way, thinks that he's going to somehow overcome all the problems that they could not. And ultimately, he just, as I said, there's no redeeming quality about Patrick.
No.
So
Although I don't really have a problem with his initial plan of chopping up Grayson and using that as a distraction to get zombies away from the gate to then escape. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. Although once Rick shows up later on and says, "No, you don't want to go out there. It's terrible,"
Yeah.
then his plan loses some of its, you know, effectiveness. When we speaking of Rick, we have the scene of him and Alex going
Mm.
down the river. Um, they're appearing more and more friendly. Alex is like smiling and warming up to Rick a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think since she proposed, that they cozy up together for the rest of the apocalypse, that's definitely shown her true colors. That she's definitely like given in for him. Whatever that like barrier she'd had up from
It's
killing her best
gone.
friend before is gone. But so she goes up to work the lock that they get to,
Yeah,
and
and this part is pretty weird to me because she's been so on guard
yeah,
before.
yeah,
This bothered me because she's working the lock, but she just seemed, and yes, she has to focus on getting it open, but she seems totally unaware of all of her surroundings, and I
yeah.
feel like Alex of all people would not be caught off guard like this. But
It's basic level horror trope. She puts down the axe, you get to see that, and then you get to see her not look around, like you said, and
yep.
just the one zombie around their area horns
And
in
it's a
on her
pretty
and
and it's a pretty grim, weird zombie too. So
pretty decomposed. Yeah,
consider it, yeah. So and then Rick I think senses that something's not right, so he goes up to see how she's doing, and it's too late, and he has to basically do what she did before and take her out because she's been bitten.
and
And
this is his first kill. He
yep,
doesn't actually kill a zombie, I
he
don't
kills her.
think, in
No,
this
he kills
show.
her.
He
He,
just kills Alex.
and so I feel like that is the point. Well, so that to me is the point where he realizes that everything Alex has been saying is true. And you can sense that there's real regret there. So by the time he actually gets to the Big Brother house, he is saying exactly the same things that Alex was saying to him at the manor. So that's a big shift in his character, and comes right up against, like, butts right up against Patrick's idea that they're gonna get to the coast. I'm not sure why they think that the coast is going to help. And at this point, the other thing is that Rick has heard international radio announcements,
Yeah.
and I feel like somebody else heard them too.
Space heard it inside the van when they were at the
Right.
supermarket.
And basically, this is not contained in the UK; it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So getting to the coast, I don't think would really do much, but that seems to be where everybody thinks is, or certain characters think is
But
safe.
before Rick can even make it into the house to share his message of global doom, he has to survive Marky shooting at him
I know,
because,
even though he keeps saying, "Don't shoot."
oi, I'm a
Oi.
normal, I'm a normalite, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
normal person. Yeah, Marky is kind of like unraveling Kelly's assertion that they'll beat them because they're smarter than the zombies.
Yeah.
Because Marky is super dumb, and he's
Yeah.
actually talking to Kelly. He's like, that one just said something. He says he's normal, and then he's, no, I can't do a northern British accent, but then he
No,
starts shooting at him anyway.
and Kelly's just like, "What are you doing? Stop." So anyway, like a very very near miss there for Rick, but he makes it in the house, and there's like a happy reunion between him and Kelly. Then there's like the big conflict between Patrick and his plan, and Kelly and Rick and most of the members of the house. So they're basically trying to hash out what to do, and the majority comes out on the side of, hey, let's just stay here in the house, because Rick was basically like, look, your plan was great, except I was just out there. This is surrounded on all sides. This is the best case scenario for all of us. Getting out will get us killed. And Patrick, it just seems like he throws this big temper tantrum, and is basically telling them, I mean, his idea to basically take the cut up portions of Grayson's body and distract the zombies and all that fun stuff. And they're against the plan, but they're mainly against the plan because there's no plan to close the gate after he would supposedly get out. Otherwise, I think they would have just happily let him go.
Yeah.
And they're worried that
Although,
his plan
why
will
can't he
attract
just
more.
climb the fence like Rick did, but in a
I know.
different part of the fence? You know.
Yeah, that seems a little crazy to me, but whatever. I probably would have just figured out a way to get him out there, and not worried about him anymore. But that's not what happens.
Yeah. We also in the last episode, like this is kind of episode 5 now, the territory we're in. But in the last episode, while he's cutting up Grayson, Patrick has this is like this really crazy scene where nobody else really wants him to cut up Grayson,
No.
except for Kelly's okay with it. He's yelling at the other members of the house the whole time, kind of his feelings about them as people, and talking about like work for a living, these all these insane things that he just never stops yelling.
Yeah,
And
and they're really crazy, and they're like he's at the same time pulling out like Grayson's guts and stuff. It's pretty disgusting.
that's very disgusting. But it's also it's kind of when I started thinking, why hasn't anybody killed this guy yet?
Right.
It really this issue only comes to a head in the next episode. But honestly, he's just by nature of being himself and this crazy version of himself. It's hard to believe that nobody else has decided to do him in.
In terms of trying to do him in, I think they're also trying to be somewhat moral about this. So instead of doing them in, they have tied him up. Though there's a lot of discussion about what to do with him. And Patrick is not. He's not stupid. He's annoying, but he's not stupid. And he plays the oldest game in the Big Brother house book, which is he decides to try to form alliances and pit people against each other. And in this case, it's Joplin. And he views Joplin as sort of the weakest member, or the member that he can manipulate more, because Joplin is sort of pathetic and knows that he's not liked. And so Patrick uses the knowledge that he has from his purview of the Big Brother house to basically tell Joplin that they're all going to turn on him once Patrick's out of the way. And things that Joplin sees and hears confirms this for him. So, for example, Patrick tells him that all the people in the house dislike him and call him Gollum behind his back. And when he's sort of coming back, he hears them do this. And
because unfortunately, Veronica and Marky are just bullies.
Right.
It's only those two, because
Yeah.
actually, who's even left of the house? It's just space and them.
Mm-hmm.
And then so for him to I don't know, for him to judge everybody based on the actions of the two clearly, I don't know, asshole people. Whatever. It pisses me off that he is this easily manipulated. It's confusing to me how he gets into the camera runs without going to the living room, which they haven't shown us a way to get back there that isn't in the living room.
Right.
So I was like, huh?
Yeah. But it does enough that confirms what Patrick has been feeding him, so he decides to ally with Patrick. I still feel like this is a little ridiculous that they would be able to. I feel like this group of people would somehow be able to overpower Patrick and Gollum.
Apparently, they just leave their guns
Yeah.
somewhere stupid. So
It just quickly deteriorates from here. While they left their guns all around, Patrick somehow manages to grab one of them, and he takes Kelly hostage.
there's no need for him to take her hostage. I really didn't get why all they needed was the guns and the guts.
Right.
And
And that's it.
So I would have just gone with that if they were gonna screw this thing up anyway.
But not as much drama, I suppose. So.
No, because things definitely go 100% bad from here. And Rick basically, once they get outside, Rick rushes. Well, when Joplin drops the bowl of guts, Rick rushes, gets shot, dies pretty quickly. Kelly goes ballistic. Joplin freaks out after the gunshot and drives to the gate, leaving Patrick behind with the bowl of guts, what's left of him.
Mm-hmm.
And basically commits suicide. Like, there's no version of this where anybody can think he would have made it.
Yep.
So he opens the gate and all the zombies come in. And so everybody else is just like, run away. Pippa and Space have gone into the offices. I'm not sure exactly where Patrick has run to. He's inside by the time he gets torn to pieces.
Mm-hmm. But he's torn to pieces. And he's torn to pieces in, like, they draw that out in the longest way possible. And
Several scenes, yeah.
And he just keeps talking. He just won't shut up.
yeah, eat that. My guts are full of shit, and he's terrible to the end. Uh,
Yes, as I said,
Space
no
Space
redeeming
is
quality.
looking for Pippa in the offices, and then the other three, Veronica, Marky, and Kelly, have made it back inside the Big Brother house, barely, and they haven't managed to close the gate behind them. So the zombies are also in the yard and in the house in its bigger bits. And then from here on out, you're like, well, it's doomed. But they give you some like flashes of hope here and there. Space
Hmm.
makes it to the control room, and he's able to shut the shutters. And you're like, maybe they could figure something out.
Yeah, but then it just, I mean, they do a good job at like building the tension here, and you think that they're gonna make it out. So like, he's able to open the diary room for her, and then for Kelly, but she's the only one that makes it in there, and like we see Marky and Veronica just totally being torn to pieces.
Yeah, when they come
Um,
through the windows of the camera runs and the fire door, it's just so brutal.
it's
And
so
they just
rough.
yeah, Marky and Veronica get overrun immediately. Kelly is axing people left and right. She's just
Hmm.
holding her own and eventually manages to get into the diary room, but not before Space has a run-in with more zombies in the control room and gets bit by a former cast member, the one with the
Yep.
A in her name, I don't remember,
Yep.
and then makes it into the smaller version of the control room. Um, and then they have like a very interesting interaction, kind of in reverse, where she's on the show and he's watching the show, and she tells him, "Congratulations, you've won, Big Brother."
Yeah, that's pretty rough. And he's still, I think he still has some hope that she'll survive or something like that because she's finally just like, look, just open it up. I'm gonna try to fight my way out, and he's just like, no. And then he sees Pippa and her mother, both zombies trying to get into the control room, and I think he just gives up. So
Well, he knows that he's dead too.
yeah, I mean he knows that already, but he's just like, okay. But I think he had some hope that Pippa was gonna still be somehow alive and figure out how to help her. But in any case, he does as Kelly says, and then there's just a big scream, and the camera's fading to black, and the sort of last scenes of this particular series are pretty grim.
Yeah.
Um, just every all of them are zombies.
Yeah. So we get a little shot of Joplin eating flesh, and then Space is just kind of staring blankly inside the booth still as a zombie. Marky and Veronica are apparently eating Grayson, which, according to, some notes that I saw, but I couldn't tell who they were eating.
Yeah, I couldn't tell who they were eating either, but
And
it's
then, yeah, we see the back of Kelly, and she's all torn up, and then she's just staring into the camera. And then that shot of her staring into the camera is the only feed going out, and it's being played in malls apparently
uh-huh.
because we get to see zombies watching her on TV.
Right. Little tip of the hat, I'd say, to Dawn of the Dead. um, but yeah, and it's not a happy ending. But it's kind of what you would expect it to be, given what the Big Brother series is and what they were trying to say about it. And again, I thought this was really successful, and I think that they hit what they wanted to do with this very hard, and I thought it was great. I really did. To me, it was one of the more successful undertakings that I've seen in some time, and I'm sad that I missed it in 2009 when it came out.
Yeah, and even then, yeah, this is really targeted at the British TV market, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's not 100%, but all of these cameos
yeah.
are
I don't think I think most of this would have been lost on me then
yeah,
too.
yeah.
But I at least had more. I had at least a sense of it that it was out there. But I definitely wouldn't have known these cast members by name.
Hmm.
I didn't even know that Davina was the host, other than by reading the Wikipedia entry. But I feel like reality TV in the zeitgeist that it was in 2009 is a little different than it is now. It might just be because I don't really watch TV anymore. But in any case, I thought that this was really an excellent series, and I would recommend it.
Yeah, you just need to watch some cartoons afterwards, or get ready to go for a walk in the sunshine because it's just so the last episode, the last half of it
Yeah,
is
it's
so
pretty
brutal.
bleak.
Or honestly, between like Patrick's manipulation and just his like fountain of negativity that he is, and then the like the dissolution of the group and their whatever plan they might have had for survival, and the death of all of the people that we even liked, like Rick and Space and Kelly, and to a much lesser degree, Marky, and Veronica.
Right.
It's just it's a tough pill to swallow, but that's the message, was basically don't be dumb. And it's, a lot of that social commentary on consumers and media consumption, and it's not exactly a happy ending.
No, it's not. And I mean, I always go back to especially when Rick got shot by Patrick. I'm like, oh, if only you had stayed at the manor with Alex. And I mean, I know that's what you always think, but it's almost like he had two chances to somehow survive and lost both of them. So his death to me was it had more impact
True.
than anybody else's. But what can you say? Agreed. I think you need some palate cleanser after you watch this. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just a little more sensitive. But this last episode was particularly tough to take. So, but
it's you know what though, I also should say that it's refreshing that Channel 4, whoever put this thing together, they didn't feel any need to pussy out, if you'll excuse the phrase, on their message. They're like, no, we're gonna go through this to the bitter end. We lose. This is a bleak ending to a zombie show, but shows like Walking Dead, it's kind of always just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
That's true. And at least in this, they wrapped it up. They didn't give you hope, which, I mean, it sometimes happens that a zombie flick will do this, but in this case, they just really didn't give you any hope whatsoever. So that's why it feels a little heavier, but I respect that choice too. All right. Well, what are we going to be talking about next week?
So next week, we're going to take a look at something that we might regret, but it's another Netflix offering that I also saw recently, and you and Bill had checked it out, or at least seen it getting advertised on Netflix. So we're going to be watching Resort with a Z. And from the trailer, my early prognosis is that it is going to be Jurassic Park with zombies, and I think that that's going to work pretty well for me.
I think me too, and I like Jurassic Park, and I like zombies, so what could go wrong?
No, nothing at all.
But until then, if you watched Dead Set or had comments about Dead Set, we'd love to hear them. So shoot us an email at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com or tweet at us. Reanimatedpcast is the handle on Twitter. Or you can leave a comment on our website, reanimatedpodcast.com.
That's all correct.
And, I would love to hear what people have to say about this, especially our British friends, because I think that they might have more things to say about this particular series, because they may have more context than we do. But until then, ciao.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening.